I do a video on this VAR. I don't remember. I think I've done a videos on this many years ago, but I figured I'd just do an update. A lot of times, unfortunately, this rifle just sits in the safe. It's 30-06, so expensive, and I don't usually even shoot that much anyway. So, but I do. This is kind of like why my channel was named Bar Gunner, and my Xbox gamer tag back in the day was Bar Gunner as well, or a variation of that. But this was it started off as a parts kit build. I remember I got this parts kit, I think, on Gunbroker, and it was in September 2012. I remember coming home from school, and I guess the kit was just sitting on the front door, and it was covered in grease, of course. And I remember I just wanted to listen to something on YouTube, and I came across this video on the Soviet-Afghan war, and it had like 2 songs, and it's like a music video about there's a famous Soviet-Afghan war song. Almost everyone seems to have heard of it, called Caravan. You can look it up. And that kind of got me into that as well. AK-74s from that era. But just a ton of, I collected many different parts for this. I didn't want to lug them all out, but I did happen to have these parts. And just before anybody clicks off, in a World War II application, this is completely wrong to have this carry handle on. I still see like World War II reenactors or living history displays or what have you with those carry handles. I don't know why. It's so easy to take off, but it does scar up the barrel. So if you're not interested in like Korean War, Vietnam, there's really no reason to have one. Although in Vietnam, I don't know if I've ever seen a picture of a BAR without a carry handle. But, so like I said, this was a parts kit build. The barrel is from 52. That's one thing I never did get. I did get this one would require like a World War I barrel, because I always wanted to have a modernized M1918 A2. I did have a 1944 dated, I think it was a New England small arms barrel many years ago. I had a whole nother kit at one point, and I sold it off. And then at the time I did have it just on a Philadelphia Ordnance 88% receiver. And then finally in July 2014, I was going to Pittsburgh with my dad, and I dropped it off at Chris Guska's house, if anybody knows that name, or he's also goes by Greaser or Ravenna Armory. And I remember dropping off at his house, and I guess he had a job interview in Cincinnati, and he came down and hand delivered it to me, so that was nice, and that worked out. But I had the parts kit, as I said, in 2012. I think probably in the fall of 2012, maybe a month or 2 after this, I got that 80% receiver. And then it wasn't until I'd say March 2014 that I got the Ohio Ordnance Works receiver, and then of course it was built by the summer. So this is a 52 dated barrel. Originally had an IBM barrel or a gas tube on here. So that's kind of a heartbreaking thing, because I guess he didn't really like test it out, or he must have tested it out, and he told me I had to get a new gas tube. So I did, but I never put it on, because this one was really tight, and the IBM one just slid right on. I had a really nice pre-World War II gas regulator. This is a correct style, but this one actually has a post-war drawing number on it. But I had a pre-war, unfortunately, gas regulator. And then about 5 years ago, I finally took it out to shoot at my friend's property, and it shot right off into the grass, and we came back many times with a metal detector and could never find it. So that's still in the dirt somewhere. I still am heartbroken over that. But so this is actually just a post-war, I think it's a Royal typewriter gas tube. I kind of have lost interest in just getting all the correct parts, because no matter what you do, it's never really going to be correct. But This is just a standard profile A2 handguard. I do actually have an original cut down modernized handguard that I don't usually keep on it. I keep it in the gun safe. But you can see just the regular flash hider, a sight hood and whatnot. And then this is a blue magazine that's usually the most correct for World War II. Which I think these are like either World War One. I'm not that good with the magazines, so it could be early World War II, but I know they made so many magazines during World War One. They used a lot of, they used a lot of World War One magazines in the at least the early years of World War II. So let's go over the bipods quick. So this is the early one. The cast bipod head is what you want, not the forged. The cast bipod head. The 90th IDPG website has a good video or article on that. Though they say the forged one's earlier, I don't agree. I don't even believe that's a wartime head. So you always want a cast bipod head. And then, of course, wing nuts at the bottom is early war, typically. I know there's a lot of debate with these bipods, but I've never seen a BAR bipod in World War II, if the bipod's on, which is another thing, that had that style leg. But, so, if you have a BAR in World War II and you want the bipod on it, these pattern of legs, these style with the wing nut at the bottom is what you want, with either the cast bipod head or the stamped bipod head. The stamped bipod head is not post-war. It was used in World War II. There's several pictures, both in Europe and in the Pacific. There's a famous picture of some guys in the 76th Division. They're like sitting on a hillside, cleaning their rifles. They're not disassembled, but there's a guy, and you can clearly see the stamped bipod head. There's also an image on Iwo Jima, and then there's another one, I'm not really sure. I think he might be in the 29th Division, maybe in like October, November 1944. He's got a helmet on with like an M44 helmet net or a shrimp net, and he's being bandaged around the jaw. It's like a footage from a film, original footage, and you can clearly see this bipod head in the background, but I don't know any more details on that, but it's definitely not Korea or anything. So then you do have a modernized trigger pack. Now this does unfortunately require some permanent modifications to the inside of the trigger pack, which you know, I hate to do something like that, but that was just what people did back then if they wanted a modernized trigger pack. So they, you know, there's just they kind of machine off a part back here, and it's kind of, the semi-automatic BAR is a completely different animal than the full auto one, just internally, just because it was an open bolt. Now this is a closed bolt, so they have to do a lot of modifications or re-engineering of the system. And you can always tell a semi-automatic BAR or an Ohio Ordnance Works BAR because you'll have that second trigger pack pin. And then, of course, the contours around the bolt stop are different. And then there's a spring-loaded pin on the originals here that will stop you from putting the selector into safe inadvertently. So it's kind of a weird thing, something that makes it harder to put the weapon on safe. But it's for full auto, semi-auto, or slow auto, and then that's safe. And then you can see the trigger is totally redesigned as well. It doesn't look like an original, but it's just what you have to live with if you have a semi-automatic BAR. And then I do have some wooden stocks, but this is an early, it's kind of like a chocolate brown color stock, and then early monopod socket. And it's a 43 dated stock. I think it's a Firestone as well. And then, might as well, this is a sling from At the Front. I think I got this around, I think 2014, which I think was pretty right around when they started coming out with these slings, if I recall. I have a 1907 sling here on my Thompson. This I got from At the Front right when it came out, which I think was in the summer of 2010. I remember right. And then the the butt plate. Might as well show that. Or butt plate assembly. You want one, I believe, with the top screw. The one with the pin, I'm not exactly sure if that's post-war or very late war. It's hard to see that detail in pictures. And then this is a modernized, so this would be like correct for a modernized BAR. This is a milled sight. You can see it just has a drawing number on it. And I do have a stamp sight I'll grab just to kind of show you. So it's got the milled construction, and then the sight leaf, the wartime sight leaf start at 300 yards. So that's another thing you can look for. Unfortunately, this one was missing the windage range gauge, or whatever this would be called. So this is actually post-war that I've added. And then this is a World War I charging handle. You see it's checkered. So they did use, apparently, the more common style in World War I think on some manufacturers. I'm not completely sure on that. This is a World War I style. And you got the milled change lever. So this would be good for a modernized BAR. And then there's, of course, modernized BARs that had new furniture added, so plastic stock and this A2 profile handguard, forearm. Let me just show this other sight here. So this is a New England small arms sight. You can see it's stamped. You can see it's got rounded corners on the bottom. And of course, it starts at 300 yards. And then you can see that New England small arms marking. Or I guess this would be a subcontractor made sight. You can see IR company. They also made carbine sights as well, the adjustable style. And then you got that screw that keeps it on. And let's see. So this style bipod leg, it was produced in World War II. It is not post-war, although I've never seen these on BARs in World War II. I've only seen them on the 1919A6. So unless you can find some pictures of these on World War II, I won't even bother with this style of bipod leg unless you're interested in Korea or Vietnam or something of that nature. But I guess I'll flip it over. I didn't really show that. And this is, I know there's a lot of debate about the finish the bolts should have. I believe this is the most correct style. This shiny style, I guess this would be like, is it nickel coated? Something like that. You know, the early Thompson bolts will have that as well. But there are some pictures that look like they're blued or most likely parkerized, but there's definitely pictures where it's this style of finish. And then I do like this trigger pack just because it has that zinc phosphate trigger pack, and then the magazine guides were blued, and then these were staked as well at the time, but they had the builder had to remove the screws, and they were kind of mangled a bit because I wanted the trigger pack parkerized as it was when I got it with the magazine guides blued. There's also a version of the magazine guides that are stamped, but this is the most common and probably most correct. So I just thought I'd do kind of an update, I guess. After all these years, I never really did an in-depth video of the BAR, but it's the Ohio Ordnance Works M1918A3.